So, hello everybody. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Gabriel, and before starting the session, I would like to briefly introduce both MOONEE and myself. At MOONEE, we believe in two different things: technology for everything which is related to operations, and being people-oriented for all of our relationships, both with studios of developers as for with our partners. In terms of technology, we are focused on a predictive approach and predictive and automatization approach, actually, which allow us to understand if an app will work and how to scale it fast. For example, when MOONEE was founded, only 4 months after the foundation of MOONEE, we published an app that hit the top chart. This was actually because our predictive approach and our technology, which allow us to scale the app as we wanted to do it. So, in particular, I work as a data analyst at MOONEE, and I'm here to talk to you about the hyper-casual market and how it works from a macro level perspective. So moving on, it's not possible to talk about the market without referring to supply and demand. This actually applies to all the markets in the world and also to the online advertiser market. Basically, there are two sides, which are supply and demand, of course. And the supply refers to places where we can show ads, while the demand refers to people or companies who wants to show ads. It's the same as what happened, for example, in the, let's say, milk market. On the one hand, we have companies and supermarkets that want to sell milk, and on the other hand, we have people that want to buy milk. Supply and demand. Just a small note in terms of supply for this specific industry is that the places to show these ads, or creatives as we usually call them, are called inventories. So basically, if you have inventory, you have demand. So as we can see, not only the hyper-casual games are part of this specific industry, we are actually competing with not only other games, but companies that they spent a huge amount of money in online marketing. So it's really hard. It's a really competitive market. So there are several agents and we are all competing for the same user. So specifically, in terms of how the hyper-casual games market works as related to advertising, it's not different to the rest of the market. Once a game is launched, there is automatically a new source of supply in the market, and its inventory are, as we already know, rewarded video, interstitials, and banners. We have another few options, but these are actually the main three. On the demand side, we find partners that will want to buy our inventory, meaning that they want to pay us to show their ads in our apps, meaning in our inventory. And on the supply side, we can find partners from where our app will buy inventory to show ads. This sounds pretty reasonable. One of the main characteristics that we can find in the hyper-casual games is that we are actually, once we launch a game, we're creating a new source of supply. Like, let's say, for example, that there were 100 apps, now there are 101. So there's a whole new world to show ads. This is only after the game is launched. So there's a new inventory in the market and a new source that allow other publishers and other companies and other games to show ads. The inventory, it's relevant to understand this, is that our demand will be mostly other games, not only, but there will be mostly other hyper-casual games that will be buying traffic inventory from us. Why is that? Well, because basically we will have a huge source of users that other apps will know that are likely to play hyper-casual games. So this is actually, seasonality is one of the key concepts of the market. It's really important to understand this concept. It can be the difference between not moving forward with a cool game because we got a high CPI, or the possibility of making money with a relatively average game. So if we check the chart, but we will be able to see that there are peaks. Okay, these peaks are at the end of the year, from the 2017 till the 2020. Okay, so this graph, this chart is showing us the variation in terms of market prices. So we can see, as already mentioned, that at the end of the year the prices are higher. So what is happening at the end of the year? For example, we have the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday seasons. This specific year we had the elections in the US. So a lot of things are going on the last quarter of the year. And also, which is it's related to Black Friday, holidays, and etc., is that it's the moment in which the big companies and brands are spending most of their marketing budget. Why? Because they see a better opportunity to sell their stuffs. What is basically generating this is an excess of demand. So the supply is actually limited. We can think about it in terms of something that we can actually count. It's not exactly like this, but for the sake of example. So if a lot of brands and companies want to show more ads, and there's a limited amount of ads that the market can actually show, basically what will happen is that the price of showing an ad will start to increase. Why? Because a lot of people want to show ads, a lot of companies want to show ads, and they're willing to pay more to show this specific ad. So just to understand a little bit, okay? A CPI of, let's say, 50 cents in November might be a CPI of 30 cents in February. Notice, I don't know if you notice this. If not, I'm telling you all right now. A lot of games are being published at the beginning of the year, but not that many games are being published at the end of the year. Bottom line, you should be aware that the difference of between testing a game in 1 month and not on the other one might be the difference between published game or not. So we need to be aware of what is going on in the market. Are the prices high? Are the prices low? And how can it affect me? So also, if we check the chart, we will see that something weird happened this year, starting on, let's say, end of March, April. So what happened was that the corona started. So we can see that there was a huge drop on the market price of showing ads, and it was mainly due to different things. The first one, as we can all imagine, is that people start spending more time on their phones and their computers, and therefore the supply increase. It's not that there were new sources of supply, but if a user, let's say that an individual is using a specific platform for 2 hours, a social platform for 2 hours, instead of the half an hour he designated to it before the pandemic. So basically, if he's using this specific social platform more time, this social platform will be able to show this user more ads. And the other thing that happened, that it also had a huge effect on the market prices, was the uncertainty. No one really knew what's going on, what will happen, how they should handle their businesses. So huge companies and brands decided to stop spending money, or at least spend less money on online marketing because they weren't sure if they will be able to sell their products, if someone will buy their products. So they spend less money, and the effect of an increase in supply due to the fact that the users were using more time their cell phones and computers, and the decrease in demand because of the conservative approach of the biggest companies and brands, generated a drop in prices. And this is actually what we call a market opportunity. And we should always be looking for different market opportunities, because a game with a CPI of 40 cents in April 2019 may have had a CPI of 30 or 25 cents in April 2020. And this is the difference between launching or not to launch a game. So now, the CPM is a key concept on the hyper-casual market. Okay, this is really important. It means cost per mile impressions, meaning like per 1,000 impressions. So let's start with a couple actually of real life examples. On the one hand, we have a waiter who is working to make money. Depending on the place where he or she works, he or he can get his salary by an hourly rate, or maybe a fixed amount per day, or who knows, maybe per month. The same is actually happening to the developer, where he or she can be paid per prototype, per hour, per results, per month, etc. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's the way in which the waiter and the developer are getting paid. All of them can be actually translated to an hourly rate. If we are talking about prototypes, how many hours do you spend to create this specific prototype? If we are working on a monthly base, how many hours per month do you work? So we can extrapolate everything to hours, basically. Okay? And in terms of market, for example, if I want to earn more money, there's actually a limited amount of hours that I can work, and there's actually also a limited amount of hours that the market will allow me to work. For example, for the waiter, if the restaurant opens 12 hours a day, it won't be possible that he will work more than 12 hours. So the same is happening on the online advertising industry. Basically, they can charge you by mile impressions, by click, by install, by action. At the end of the day, everything can be summarized to how much you're paying per 1,000 impressions. And this is why this is the key metric, which is actually connecting all the other metrics on the market. Okay, so as we know that there is a lack on hours that a person can work, there is also a lack of ad spots. Like, it's a limited amount and we cannot show more than this amount of ads. Okay, so without getting into many details, okay, there are metrics that might help our competitiveness in terms of showing ads. But for example, if I want to show an ad to some specific user, the ad it's likely to be cheaper if the ad is relevant for this user, and the ad is also likely to be cheaper if we are using big budgets, because we can buy on scale, so that will make it easier to buy and therefore cheaper. So basically, there are a lot of metrics that might help us to get a better price. Okay, and by better price, we're referring to a lower CPM, cost per mile impressions. So a small note about the hyper-casual market is that we have a key competitive advantage, which is that our audience is really broad. We are mostly targeting all type of people who is likely to play hyper-casual games that, as we know, it's really broad. And the other one is that CPMs are relatively low because of the broadness of the audience and also because the ads tends to be relevant for them. Okay? So as we know, everything can be summarized to the CPM. Okay, this is something that we already know. So let's start checking a little bit this diagram that I'm presenting. Okay, basically we start with the CPM, which are the impressions and how much I'm paying for these impressions. Okay, then we have the clicks, and for the fact that we have the clicks, we also have the cost per click, and the ultimate layer is the installs. Okay, and how much are we paying per install, the CPI, which is actually a metric that I know that you all are aware of. Okay, so for example, if I have a CPM, which is the cost per mile impressions, I also have a cost per click. And how do I calculate the cost per click? It's basically how many clicks did I have, and I need to divide the money that I'm paying for the impressions over the clicks. This will give me the cost of each click. And the same is happening with the CPI. How much was to show 1000 impressions? How many installs did I get? Okay, so here I have the CPI. So on the CTR, it's basically, which is also a metric that I know that most of you know, the CTR is telling us how many clicks did I have per 1000 impressions, while the conversion rate, it's telling me this is something that might vary. Some people calculate it based on clicks and other people calculate it based on impressions. But basically, it's the number of installs out the number of impressions. This is the one I actually prefer. So basically the IPM, which is the last metric that I didn't mention yet, is telling us how many installs per mile impressions did I have, which is also the conversion rate if we assume that it's based on the conversion rate, it's based on impressions. Okay, so as we can see, all these metrics depends on the initial price I'm paying to show 1000 impressions. Now let's get back to seasonality a bit. We saw that in certain moments of the year markets get more expensive, meaning that CPMs are higher, so therefore CPIs will be higher. So you can even decide that a prototype is not good because it had a CPI, but this actually might be related to the high CPMs moment, like this moment the market is expensive. So actually, believe it or not, this scenario is really common, and the first thing we recommend is holding the test a bit to test the prototype like in a properly way. If this is not possible, because sometimes it's not possible to wait, try to pay attention to other metrics, such as CTR, conversion rate, or IPM. Why? Because they are actually not affected by the cost. If you got 50 clicks out of 1000 impressions, it doesn't matter how expensive these impressions were. You will get 550 clicks out of 1000 impressions. The same applies to conversion rate and installs per mile. These metrics are really way much less sensitive to market volatility, and even though seasonality might hurt them a bit because there are more players so showing relevant ads, so the user you're targeting is likely to have already seen a lot of ads, so maybe he won't interact with your ad. But bottom line, these metrics are a better benchmark compared to the CPI. So this is actually one of my favorite parts of work, which is the monetization side. So as we already know, we have inventory and we're selling it through waterfalls. Okay, What does it mean? Basically, the way the waterfall works is that I have a lot of partners demanding my inventory, and I start asking them, okay, how much do you want to pay for this one, for this specific ad? How much do you want to pay me to show a rewarded video, or to show a banner, or to show an interstitial video, okay? So it's called waterfall because the prices go at, I mean, it makes sense. It goes from higher to lower. So I start asking a specific price. So if this partner is not willing to pay, I go to the next one for a lower price, and then I go to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. And also, it's not that I only asking one time per partner. Maybe I'm asking this specific partner for one bid, and then after asking another price to some 2 to 3 partners, I will ask this specific partner again, okay, you didn't want to pay 100. What about 60? Are you willing to pay 60? So basically, this is the way the waterfall work, okay? And of course, the prices we're charging to show ads are based on CPMs. So basically, we are giving them a price based on showing 1,000 impressions. So the price might differ as the quality of the user they are showing the ads also differs. The better the user, the higher the price that the one demanding this piece of inventory is willing to pay. In our case, hyper-casual games are mostly showing other ads, other game ads. Mostly hyper-casuals, also some casual. Not only, but mainly. There are a few brands showing ads in this industry also, but bottom line, hyper-casual is advertising mainly in hyper-casual. It's even more relevant to mature apps when it's hard to run on social platforms due to the increase on price. So to summarize, we have 2 different sides, which are the UA and the monetization side. Both of them are based on a CPM price. On the UA side, we're paying a certain CPM to try to get users to our apps, which means that we are demanding inventory, and on the monetization side, we are selling inventory to those who are demanding it. In other words, we are buying inventory from someone else's waterfall, while this someone else is also buying inventory from our waterfall and from other waterfalls, and so on, so on, so on. And the metric that it's connecting everything, all the waterfalls, all the UA side, everything, it's the CPM. So thank you very much for joining us. I think we still have a few minutes in case you have any question. Please feel free to ask. And thank you very much.